Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Grapevine Open Meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm Chris, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'll be your host for the month of July. This is the AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. You can enjoy the Grapevine Open Meeting every Wednesday at noon Eastern on this virtual platform. The meeting will be recorded and will be posted as an audio podcast every Friday on all podcast platforms, on aagrapevine.org, and on YouTube. This is an open meeting. Everyone is welcome. We are glad you're all here, especially newcomers. If you are new to AA and want to learn more about our program of recovery from alcoholism, we encourage you to find an AA group in your area. Contact with group members will help you find a sponsor and help you learn about the AA program of recovery from alcoholism. This is today's daily quote. I'm right on my app here. It's a daily quote, July 29th, 2026. There has to be something to be grateful for if I am only willing to change my attitude and look for it. That's a quote from article called Not on Fire, AA Grapevine in March 2010. You can sign up to receive the daily quote as a daily email at aagrapevine.org, or you will find it on the Grapevine app every morning. And this is an excerpt from the Grapevine. And since this is my last week, I want to do a special one. This is from the book The Next Frontier, Emotional Sobriety 1 and 2. It's a hardcover book available from the AA Grapevine. And this is the article by Bill, excerpt from the article by Bill, The Next Frontier, Emotional Sobriety. It's from January 1958 in Grapevine magazine. I think many oldsters who have put our AA booze cure to severe but successful tests still find they often lack emotional sobriety. Perhaps they will be the spearhead for the next major development in AA, the development of much more real maturity and balance, which is to say humility, in our relations with ourselves, with our fellows, and with God. Those adolescent urges that so many of us have for top approval, perfect security, and perfect romance, urges quite appropriate for age 17, prove to be an impossible way of life when we are at the age of 47 or 57 or 68. That's me. Since AA began, I've taken immense wallops in all these areas because of my failure to grow up emotionally and spiritually. My God, how painful it is to keep demanding the impossible, and how very painful to discover finally that all along we have had the cart before the horse. Then comes the final agony of seeing how awfully wrong we have been, but still finding ourselves unable to get off the emotional merry-go-round. How to translate a right mental conviction into a right emotional result, and so into easy, happy, and good living. Well, that's not only the neurotic problem, it's the problem of life itself for all of us who have got to the point of real willingness to hew right principles in all our affairs. Even then, as we hew away, peace and joy may still elude us. That's the place so many of us AA oldsters have come to, and it's a hell of a spot, literally. How shall our unconscious from which so many of our fears, compulsions, and phony aspirations still stream, be brought into line with what we actually believe, know, and want. How to convince our dumb, raging, and hidden Mr. Hyde becomes our main task. Okay. And I want to do a reading also from, Bill goes on in that article to talk about the St. Francis prayer. So I want to read that excerpt from the 11th step in the 12 and 12. The actual experience of meditation and prayer across the centuries is, of course, immense. The world's libraries and places of worship are a treasure trove for all seekers. It is to be hoped that every AA who has a religious connection which emphasizes meditation will return to the practice of that devotion as never before. But what about the rest of us who, less fortunate, don't even know how to begin? Well, we might start like this. First, let's look at a really good prayer. We won't have far to seek. The great men and women of all religions have left us with a wonderful supply. Here, let us consider one that is a classic. Its author was a man who, for several hundred years now, has been rated as a saint. We won't be biased or scared off by that fact, because although he was not an alcoholic, he did, like us, go through the emotional wringer. And as he came out the other side of that painful experience, this prayer was his expression of what he could then see, feel, and wish to become. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds, it is by forgiving that one is forgiven, and it is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. As beginners in meditation, we might now reread this prayer several times, very slowly, savoring every word and trying to take in the deep meaning of each phrase and idea. It will help if we can drop all resistance to what our friend says. For in meditation, debate has no place. We rest quietly with the thoughts of someone who knows, so that we may experience and learn. Okay, this is a two-speaker meeting. There will be no sharing by attendees, so please sit back, relax, and listen. We often hear that it is best to try and identify with the speakers rather than to compare your stories with theirs. Our first speaker today is a good friend of mine. We've been working together for a few years now, and I'm always in a good mood around Nikki. So go ahead, Nikki.
Thanks, Chris. That's quite a thing to say. I appreciate that. My name's Nikki. I'm an alcoholic. I'm grateful to be above ground, sober, and at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous today. And that is my classic start line. So if you've heard me before, you've heard me say that. There's a lot. When I talk about my drinking days, it's kind of thrilling for a minute, but then I remember how just bad it got. So I'll just share that at first. And I was 11 years old. I'm an only child, and I think we belong in our own special club. I think that's probably just my ego, but I was 11 years old, and I lived on the quote unquote right side of town, and the boys from the wrong side of town came over the tracks, and they had a gallon milk jug that I'm not certain that they washed it out. I don't know, but it had the 14-year-old mix in it, which was everything in their parents' liquor cabinet plus Zyrex. And that ought to tell you about how old I am, right? And so they were drinking it and they were laughing and they were having fun. And I was still wondering what I should do with my hands, or where should I make eye contact. And they offered me a drink and I took one and I was off to the races. Um, I didn't know this then, but I know it now. My insides were searching to feel like their outsides looked like they felt. And I don't know how they really felt, but I just thought, oh, if I could just be like them. And my first drink, I got drunk. Um, I don't know what happened. My parents were off someplace. And when they came home from wherever they were, I was already passed out in my bed, and all of the curtains were down in the living room. I cannot tell you what happened there, but I can only imagine. And my mother came in the next morning. The dreaded sunlight was shining in my eyes, and she turned up my very loud stereo to. um, I, I hope you don't have to erase this, but "Stairway to Heaven," and my head was this big and pounding, and I said, wait a minute, what do you do? And she said, that's what you get for drinking. Now get up and let's go. And so while that felt very punishing at the moment, I look back and think, boy, that was kind of no big deal. And I drank like that every single time I drank. There was never a time that I can remember that I just had one, or that I just didn't make a complete jerk of myself, or, of somebody else. My sarcasm would always be biting and sort of pinching other people. And I woke, when I came to that morning, I thought, oh, I'm never going to do that again. And I was right back doing it Friday night, or whatever night that was. And so I kept searching to feel different, to feel better, to look like other people looked. And, I went to a, a Catholic school, and I wore a blue tartan jumper just like everybody else. I had blue fuzzy socks just like everybody else. My saddle shoes looked exactly the same, and I always felt different. I've heard that so many times in here, I find out I'm not so different, which is sort of interesting, right? Everything I ever wanted to feel out of AA, I feel in AA. So that's kind of nice to finally get that place. But I drank like that the whole time. I People sort of thought it was funny for a while, and then it stopped being funny when they became my victim. This is a bad story, but I was encouraged to share some of my drunkenness, and here it is. This is the most embarrassing moment in my early recovery, but I was at a party, clearly acting out, and it was just before I got sober, just before, and I was in the grocery store with somebody who I was just learning about in AA. I didn't know them. And some voice from down at the other end of the aisle of the grocery store said, "Hey, Nikki, is that you? I didn't recognize you with your clothes on." Okay, that was mortifying. Right? Now, if I would have been drinking still, it probably would have just been funny and probably would have gone off, and who knows. But I was trying to get sober. It was really difficult, and it was painful. And now it's funny a little bit. But anyway, I've had so many debacles with drinking. I thought it was great that I had a car and that I could be the designated drunk driver. I mean, I don't have a story that's, dynamic and that much different than what I've heard in here, but it felt so dreadful when I started to uncover it and see what was going on. I hate to say that, I blamed my parents for a lot of stuff, and I'll get into that more in my recovery, but I, I drank at them. I caused trouble at them. Like I thought if I'm bad enough or good enough, then I'll be different in their eyes. And, they didn't, it was just what it was. And my mom was the person in the middle between my father and I. She kept everything sort of together. She kept, to the best of her ability, things going. And she ended up in going to prison for some bad behavior when I was about 13. And that was this thing that happened that now my father and I are forced to be together without her, being the referee between the two of us. And it created some problems, but oddly enough, my father and I got through it and things were okay. And, she came home and things sort of went back to crazy town. And so I would drink simply to feel different. I met the man of my dreams when I was drinking. I know it was him because he had a car and a job. Now, he lived in his parents' basement and he paid $35 a month for rent, but I knew he had to be the one, right? So, and I laugh about that, but that was really what I was thinking. I thought this guy's got it together. And we went out on our quote unquote first date, which consisted of some dry goods and a 24 pack to see, who's going to drink the most. And, we ended up getting married. It was great. And come to find out, very interesting stuff happens when you sober up and you look at this stuff. And I had 2 kids with him. And, during my pregnancy, I never drank. That doesn't mean I didn't want to. That doesn't mean that I wasn't thinking about it. I was miserable and I was ugly, but he continued to drink. So I just got madder and madder and madder and jealous or whatever that was. But we stayed together for 10 years and my kids were, doing well. They're, whatever, as well as they could be with a couple of parents who would give them some pain medication at night so that they could, get to sleep in their cribs a little faster so we could, do what we wanted to do, which is embarrassing, but it is what it is. And I had a moment or lots of moments of insanity that ended up that I needed to get some outside help. And I went into a psychiatric unit for a little while. And I mean, like 10 days. And while I was there, nobody visited me. Nobody had anything to do with me. And my husband at the time served me divorce papers and said I could never see my kids again, which clearly was, frothy emotional appeal. But I believed it at the time and I fell apart, because I was trying to hold that image up. Remember, I really wanted I wanted my outsides to feel like your outsides looked like they look, but my insides could never catch up. And, so we went round and round about that and things have turned around and things are okay now, but it was difficult. So he dropped off a bag of things for me so that I didn't have to go back to the house. It was January 2002. Not that the year matters, but January in Maine is not warm. And he dropped off a plastic bag full of clothes. Well, it wasn't really full of clothes, but it was a bag that had some clothes in it for me. It was one flip flop, a bikini top, and a pair of sweatpants. That was what I had in January to leave. And I was it was terrifying. But I ended up getting to a meeting because the doctor said, well, if you try these meetings, you might get some relief. And I didn't want to be an alcoholic. I didn't own a trench coat. I'd never heard of AA. I didn't know what any of it was. But I went to it and people there, it was a circle, I remember, and it was down in the basement and there were bars on the window just because it's in the basement of the church. And we went in and everybody was in a circle. And they were all talking about how grateful they were and how wonderful sobriety was and what it looked like. And I just kind of wanted to throw up a little bit because I just couldn't imagine what that felt like. I figured they were all lying. And after I literally stood up like a fool and said, "You guys just don't understand. We're not all like that." And afterwards, somebody came up to me and did one of those, there, you'll be fine, pat me on the shoulder and gave me a newcomer's packet and said, "Why don't you come back tomorrow night?" And of course, I thought that meant that he wanted to get with me. He wanted to date me because he wanted me to come back. So I did, of course, because I had a lot to offer, one day sober and, looking like a skeleton. It just was nuts, that thinking. And I don't know whatever happened to that guy. I never saw him again, but I was so grateful after I looked back on it to see just how important it is to be a greeter or a person that goes up to the new person, because I don't know if I would have gone back after that. I just don't know. I hung around, basically drinking the coffee, eating the cookies, and looking for the cute guys for probably a couple of months. I wasn't able to see my kids. I wasn't able to see anybody. My parents sort of said, "Nope, we're done with you." I didn't even think I was that bad. I didn't really think I was that bad, but it was. And it wasn't until I was in AA for, a little while when I started to do some work to see, like, oh, that did hurt somebody. Oh, that behavior was poor. I just really thought I deserve it. I deserve to act like that. Um, so I got into sobriety, and things started to change. Not all for the better by any stretch, but they were different. And different was good because what I was doing was not working out. And I just went to meetings every day because I didn't really have anything else to do. I mean, if I would have been asked to go to the dance, I probably would have done that in the beginning. But it was as if my higher power shut down every opportunity that I had to step outside of Alcoholics Anonymous. I live in the metropolis of Southern Maine when I was getting sober, and I I moved to a very rural area where there were 40 sober alcoholics in a 2,500 square mile region, and so everybody knew everybody. So when I walked into my first meeting in that place, they were all like, "Tell your story, we're sick of listening to each other." And it was great for me to connect with all of them, because in the meetings that I was going to, I could sit in the back row and come in late and leave early, and nobody really paid attention because they were paying attention to the meeting and not me. But there they would be like, "Where were you last night? What happened? How come you weren't here?" But I started to. My husband was a second one, a second practice husband was C5 quadriplegic, paralyzed from the neck down. And we used to have a van, and everybody kind of we had to go in the van. He couldn't get in another car. So we ended up being the driver to a lot of these meetings that were 30, 40 miles away. So you had the meeting before the meeting and the meeting after, and all that stuff was just so incredibly helpful to me. And I didn't know it. That's the beauty of AA. I never really know the lesson I'm learning until I'm on the other side of it. But we kept my Grapevine subscription, and this isn't a commercial for Grapevine, but we kept a Grapevine subscription the whole time. And every month we would put our magazines in the van. So we had all these magazines, and we ended up, people would get in the van and we'd have them read the joke, and we'd take that joke and we'd go into the meeting with it. And it was really a great connection for me. I ended up moving back down to the metropolis again, which I live in a town now that has 3,000 people. We are really rocking here. But my life in sobriety has been so much more than my life in drinking. And that early sobriety was really difficult. Sometimes that first 18 months was harder than the last of my drinking because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to feel, and I didn't know how to feel it. But things shifted, and a lot of things happened. I'd love to tell you more, but I don't want to go without sharing this. The relationship with my mother and father was on again, off again. It was kind of strange. It was weird. It was good. It was bad. It was all these things. And at the end of my mom's life, we were all very close, except my dad and I still had this wedge. Like there was still that thing that you just, like we grunted at each other. Really, it was like, hey, you know. And my mom passed away in January with the words, "You need to take care of Dad." And that's, you know, guilt from the grave. I'm still getting it, you know. But I had the opportunity to fly out and meet my dad, who had driven out to Montana. I had the opportunity to go out and fly out, and we fished in the Madison River, and we fly fished in the Gallatin, and we fly fished in the Yellowstone, and we saw grizzly bear, and we saw elk, and we saw moose, and all of that stuff. That stuff I've done with him 1,000 times. Well, not 1,000, but at least 30 times in my lifetime. And it was different this time. And we had a connection this time that just had never been there before. And while my mother's passing is super duper sad and I miss her terribly, it's interesting the relationship that I've been able to develop with my dad as a result of being his person now. And that's a gift that I don't know that I'll ever be able to pay back. But what I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous is that the the debt that I owe AA will never be paid back, but I have to keep trying. So I'm really excited that I was able to share with you today. I hope you got something. And if you didn't, keep coming back, because surely you'll hear something you connect with. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Nikki. I could definitely identify with a bunch of stuff you talked about. You talked about the big gallon of booze that friends brought over. There was an episode that I had where almost the same exact thing. It wasn't a mixture. One guy had stolen a bottle of bad scotch from his father. Another one had stolen a big gallon jug of homemade wine from his father. And we already had beer going around. And I tried to show off, and I was guzzling all the different stuff and ended up passing out and having to be carried home by the police. I'm glad they brought me home instead of to jail. But anyway, and then what you said about, in the meetings, being welcoming to newcomers and talking to them. And we had a newcomer last night at a meeting in Briarcliff, and I was very proud of my group, how welcoming they were, and how people talked to him, and before and after the meeting, and I too remember having great experience with the meeting. After the meeting, my first sponsor worked near where I worked, and we had about a 10-block walk after the meeting, and we'd walk and talk, and it was great. I miss those days, even though I was really screwed up in the head at that point, but something was great about it. Anyway, so a few announcements before we get to our second speaker, Terry. The seventh tradition of AA states that every AA group should be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. AA members can help by contributing to your group, your local office, your area and district, and to the General Service Board. There's a great pamphlet called Self-Support, where money and spirituality mix, and you can find that on aa.org. Grapevine does not accept contributions, but of course we do have expenses. The best way to support Grapevine is to subscribe to the magazine, either in print, online, or on the apps. You can subscribe to the magazine in print or online by visiting aagrapevine.org, and you can subscribe to the app by searching for AA Grapevine on the App Store on your phone. You can also purchase Grapevine books, greeting cards, and other items at your local AA office. And by doing so, you'll be supporting both Grapevine and your local office. You can also visit the Grapevine online store at aagrapevine.org. The AA Grapevine Carry the Message project allows you to help us help others by providing magazine subscriptions to those who are incarcerated, hospitalized, living in remote areas, or stuck at home. Visit aagrapevine.org and click on Carry the Message to learn more. We invite you to listen to our other weekly podcast, the AA Grapevine Half Hour Variety Hour, which is available for free on all podcast platforms and at aagrapevine.org. Check out Our Primary Purpose. That's the official podcast of the General Service Office of AA. Tune in to hear how AA's message continues to reach those who need it most. For all podcasts, be sure to subscribe on your favorite streaming platform so you can catch all the episodes. And please follow Grapevine on Instagram and YouTube as well. Our second speaker, Terry and I belong to the same home group. And you know how there's certain people that do more than everybody else? Well, Terry is one of those people. And he's always steps forward when we need somebody to lead a meeting or to open up or whatever the job is. Terry has been great over the past several years. So, welcome, Terry.
Thank you, Chris, for the glowing introduction. Nikki, thank you for getting us going today. Hi, everybody. I'm Terry. I'm an alcoholic. I think I'm going to bounce around instead of having a linear drunk-a-log today. My sober date is 3/31/21, so relatively speaking, not that long in the program, a little over 5 years. So I spent a good portion of my so-called adult life with alcohol as my constant companion. And it was really, for me, just a way of life. Brought up, there was usually alcohol around in family get-togethers and celebrations, weddings, wakes, what have you. So it was really always there. And I usually always felt I was a responsible drinker. It would usually start out that way. But toward the end, the progressive nature of the disease caught up with me, as it will with everybody who continues drinking the way we drank. So anyway, what brought me in was I'd been retired for just under a year, and so consequently had a lot of free time on my hands. And one March afternoon, might even have been St. Patrick's Day. March has always been a big trigger month for me for a number of reasons I'll get into as I go along. Walking my dog, of course, I had been drinking. And as I'm getting into my driveway, my dog starts running around. I get tangled in her leash, face plant on the driveway, and trip to the ER at Phelps Hospital, and 5 stitches in my upper lip later. I knew that it was time for me to throw in the towel and just say enough, which I did. And so shortly thereafter, my wife wanted to get me into a rehab, which I At that point, I was ready to do pretty much anything. So I said, okay, called up St. John's Riverside, and they sent me down to their facility. And during the, I guess, enrollment process, talking to the admitting doctor or whomever, and by then I had been sober for a few days, and for thankfully, I didn't meet the criterion for admission there, which was just as I was just as happy about. It didn't strike me as a terribly savory place to be, judging by the people who I saw coming in. So it was after that, to get home, I made the call to AA. And this was right after, or right around when COVID was letting up, and in-person meetings were just getting underway again. And I did my first meeting at the Briarcliff group, and fortunately, masks and social distancing were still a thing then, which I was just as happy about because I had this hideous scar on my lip. We had to wear masks all the time. So it gave that a little bit more time to fully heal up. And so I just kept coming. It didn't take me too long to go from, well, how am I going to sit through an hour of this stuff to, hey, well, maybe these people have something here that I could benefit from. So I just kept coming and started in on Zoom as well. So I had what I like to think of as the best of both worlds in getting sober. And wouldn't you know it, as I went along, there were people I knew who I used to go out party with, or people from other lines of work I had been in. So knowing people who were already in there gave me kind of a leg up to get to know what it was all about, and find out that there is more to living a sober life than just not drinking. And so I've always been of the mind that whatever I put into something, I'll get out of it. And that couldn't be truer for AA as well. Whatever service I do, and when Chris asked me last night if I could speak today, I gave it all of about 10 seconds thought before I said yes. That plus everybody in the meeting before the meeting was saying, yeah, you got to do this, Tara, go ahead. That aside, I'm glad to do it, and it does keep me sober for another day. And the knowledge that the things that I did yesterday might not necessarily be what I need to do today to keep my sobriety is what keeps me answering the call. So all that being said, my life today is a lot more harmonious than it had been when I was drinking. A lot of that entailed the secretive hiding aspect of my disease. It would be the vodka in the water bottles like that. And then the energy I would have to expend trying to behave as if I were sober when, if not necessarily drunk, certainly I had been drinking. So that I'm not expending that energy anymore, because it's actual me, not the other guy who would show up after 3 or 4 drinks in, and well, I'm sure you can relate. But growing up, I I'm the sixth of 8 children. It's 3 boys, 2 girls, 3 boys, and you know, education was stressed growing up, and so we all went through high school, college, and did all right. And uh, through my 20s and 30s, I was always a responsible guy holding down jobs, and there's never any kind of malicious mischief I can recall through all of it. uh, so I've been a pretty active guy. Played a lot of sports, scuba diving, martial arts, what have you. And so I move along through my working life. I got married in '99, became a dad in 2001. Still holding down a job, keeping a roof over our heads, and then raising our daughter, who was born in 2001, and doing all the outward things to show the world I got a handle on this stuff, but chasing that buzz all the while. And as I say, the alcohol was my constant companion through all of it. And it was around in the early 2000s, I would say, things started, well, the wheels started shaking on the wagon a little bit. I lost my youngest brother in 2007, and he and I shared an apartment for a number of years. He was my best man at my wedding, and he passed away at age 48, which was all too soon in this life. And that some grief does have its own timeline, and I find I still am coming to grips with that quite a bit. And so, you got to live. So I kept putting one foot in front of the other. But, drinking was increasing while this was going on. And 2010, lost my brother Peter directly as a result of this disease at age 60. Died of cirrhosis of the liver, after it cost him 2 marriages, and we virtually ran away, and just anyway, that didn't help my drinking at all. And then less than 3 years after that, I lost my other brother, not directly, then certainly indirectly as a result of this disease. So at this time, drinking is becoming as much to medicate and just keep all the grief at arm's length as anything else. Still, all the while, putting on the outward front of having it together. Still working, being a soccer dad, and all of that stuff. And then 2014, my mom passed away. And, this is just repeated body blows of grief in a very short period of time. And again, the alcohol is always there to ease those blues. And I was using it more and more for that, self-medicating. Up to the point where in 2017, the guy who'd been my mentor on the job, he passed away. And we had a memorial service for him. And the day after, I was doing some skiing back in 2017 now. And the day after that, I was heading up to Vermont to do some skiing, meet up with the gang, and ended up getting popped for a DUI. just outside of Rutland, Vermont. And, you might have thought that that would have been the final nail in the coffin, but you'd be wrong. As it turned out, fortunately, I didn't lose my license as a result of this. I guess Vermont and New York didn't have a reciprocal agreement. And so I was able to keep my license. But as you might imagine, it wasn't very much fun when I got back home and had to face my wife and daughter and contend with the issues arising from this run-in with the Vermont law. And so to that end, I enrolled in the Phelps Outpatient Alcohol Treatment Services program. And I knew I didn't really want to stop drinking then. I was doing that as much to adjudicate my legal peccadillos as anything else. And so I did that and abided by all the rules and regulations going along with that program, no drinking or anything else, and ended up getting my certificate of completion from them at the end of 6 or so months. And by then, the legal issues were resolved. And, what I do, what did I do? I gave myself a good pat on the back for my ingenuity and resourcefulness at getting out of that jam. But that only served to push my drinking further underground and increase the isolation and the everything else that goes along with the progressive nature of the disease. And it was getting to the point where everyone was able to recognize it except me, which I heard is a common tale from some of the shares that I've heard since I've been in. And so from about 2017 up until 2021, that was how my drinking went. I couldn't very well bring it out into the open at home after everything I had been through with the situation in Vermont. And brings us up to the dog walking instrument and the final encounter I had with it. And, since I've come in, I really haven't been looking backwards at my drinking. And when I do, it's usually more or less just to use it as a signpost to where I've been and where I'm going now. It was my life certainly has smoothed out considerably since I don't have to expend the energy concealing something that I'm not doing. And moving forward day to day, waking up without a hangover is key. And doing service is as good a way for me to stay sober and to try and give back to what the program has given to me and continues to give to me each day. And as Chris mentioned, we did just have a new guy come in for the first time into our Grapevine meeting last night. And it made me think of what might have been if the hand of AA hadn't been there when I reached out for it. And last night was a case in point of that very thing. And I take it pretty seriously. I've seen firsthand what this disease does, not only to me, but to everybody who is impacted on it. It's not just myself, but it's everyone in my immediate surroundings who was affected by it, and I just can't be that liability any longer. Growing up and on the job, I was always the go-to guy, and whatever job I might have been holding down at any given time, I was always there, and the alcohol was getting in the way of that anymore. And so, call it the progressive nature of my disease. Even without realizing it, because then, as I say, everybody could recognize it except for me. And fortunately, that is not the case today. And for that, I'm grateful, and I appreciate you giving me the platform to share a little bit today, Chris. Thanks so much. And with that, I'll give it back to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Terry. Great to hear you. A couple things I heard that struck me was, in AA, we've learned that it's more than just not drinking. It's learning how to live sober. And I really appreciate that Saturday evening meeting we have, the Living Sober meeting, just all the ways of not drinking. But there's also learning to let go, live and let live, all those wonderful new habits that we acquire in Alcoholics Anonymous. And what you said about the advantages of service, when you make the coffee, you get an opportunity to talk to other people before the meetings and build relationships with people, and it's a wonderful way of life. Well, thank you both very much. It's great to hear both of you. To everyone who's still with us, please let your friends know about our meeting. This is an open meeting, so it's also ideal for friends who want to learn about Alcoholics Anonymous. Keep this in mind when you're doing cooperation with the professional community or public information work. Next month, August, the leader of the meeting will be Kimberly, so we look forward to that. And I want to invite Nikki to close the meeting in the way of your choice.
Thanks, Chris. My in-person home group, we close with the 7-step prayer, so that feels very appropriate today. So, my Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad.
Bad.
Pray that you now remove from me every single
defect of character
which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Chris.
Right.
Nikki, nice to meet you.
Meet you too, Terry.
Bye.
Bye.